Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, welcome to the Earthworks Podcast. I'm Joel Simmons, and today I've interviewed Troy Crawford from FC Dallas in Dallas, Texas. Troy manages 34 acres of soccer and lacrosse fields in the heart of Texas. And today we're going to talk about the work that he's done to renovate the fields and the return on investment when modifying those fields and amending them with soil amendments to build stronger soil bases and to build better fields. Welcome to the podcast, and here's Troy. Good morning, everybody. I'm Joel Simmons. This is the Earthworks Podcast. We are with a very good friend of ours from Dallas, Texas, and we're going to be talking with Troy Crawford in his wife's classroom, Mrs. Crawford's classroom. She's a teacher, and as most teachers these days, they're sitting at home doing exactly what we're doing, talking through a strange social media thing. But Troy, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure having the opportunity to work with you and spend some time with you over all these years. And I love what your wife has done with your background. That's great. I'm gonna have to use that.
She's very much into Mickey Mouse, and
I see that.
As you can see, Toodles all over the background and that. So she has a whole nother room that is entirely the Magic Kingdom, has all the Epcot and the Disney World, and she's painting on it, and so very much into Mickey Mouse, so it's cool.
Didn't want to broadcast from that room today, I guess. Wanted to get to
that one doesn't have as good an AC up there, so it's kind of a sweat box.
Gotcha. How is the weather in Dallas these days? You've got to be going through the heat of the summer right now.
Oh, yes. It's very hot, very humid. We had some rain showers pop up yesterday. Kind of put a kink into my top dressing, but it's very warm and very conducive to growing the Bermuda.
So you are in the heat. You are in the heart of Texas. What's the season been like so far, weather-wise? How's it been? Has it been reasonable rain? I mean, were you early in the heat? And tell us a little bit about the setup for the season so far.
I think it was a little slow. Normally we'll warm up a little quicker, but it's been very gradual. We've been kind of lucky. I don't know that we've even hit triple digits yet. Knock on wood on that.
We're fingers crossed.
Yes. I like where we're at right now. We're upper 90s, and it's finally kicked the Bermuda into growing. So normally we kind of kick in a little earlier, but this year it seemed to be a little bit delayed.
So tell us about who you are and what you are. You're working at FC Dallas, a soccer complex that is incredibly impressive. I always get the number wrong. 28 fields, 18 fields. There's an 8 in there, I think. How many fields do you have?
Well, we have 18 soccer fields, and then we have 2 lacrosse fields.
Okay, I knew there was an 8 in there. All right.
That we can also convert into soccer fields too. So they're lacrosse/soccer fields.
And short of this ridiculous time in our lives that we find ourselves with this COVID, normal schedule for you is just completely crazy. I mean, talk to us about that. I mean, it's constant play. And who is it? Who's on these fields every day?
Well, we have basically, we have 2 different seasons. We have the spring and we have a fall season where we have 4 different organizations that we deal with, from youth to adult. So during those seasons, we're blowing and going with games, from sun up till well past sundown, around 10 p.m. So with our lights and everything. So it's very busy. Our summer, we kind of, since we're in our growing season, we kind of pull back and just do a few tournaments and some trainings. So that allows me to do the top dressing and coring and all those fun cultural things that we get to do. But for a good portion of the year, we're open just about year round. There's only about 6 weeks, and that's actually kind of shrunk down to. We used to be closed after Thanksgiving and then on through to about mid-January. But now we've had tournaments into December and tournaments in January. And
Wow.
so with us purchasing grow blankets and that, we're just moving blankets around and keeping the fields going and keeping them playing.
Yeah, I've been on that property a number of times, and it's always impressive, especially in light of how much pressure you guys must have from day-to-day activity on that field. Take me back. I mean, I know when I first started working with you, you guys were Elm Fork Complex, and you're part of the FC Dallas thing, and you've got some relationships with the MLB teams. And just walk me through the whole setup of what this complex and what is the relationship that you have with all these other soccer and other sports related organizations in that area.
Well, the actual property, it's 120 acres, and 80 of it is developed. We still have 40 acres that haven't been developed yet. So we can even add some more fields at some point. But right now we have, like I said, 20 fields, about 34 acres worth of athletic fields. And so the actual property, like I said, is owned by the city of Dallas. We have a lease with the city of Dallas to manage the property. And so it's our job to bring in teams and leagues and try and turn a profit, and so that the city doesn't have something that's losing money, but we have a property that brings people in and creates tremendous economic impact for the city.
Yeah, I would think so with all the play you're getting, and you're getting payment from every team or every club that comes in. Is that how this works?
Yeah, we basically rent the fields at $100 an hour, and it's not any one-offs. It's mainly just tournaments and leagues that we do this for, and everybody has to have a contract and insurance and all that good jazz. And a lot of people are kind of disappointed when Tom Smith can't come out and just play on the fields,
right?
Because we're not really structured that way.
Yeah. So most of the play is who are the people that are typically on the fields day to day?
So 90% of our play is probably youth. We have a contract with the Chamber Classic League. We also have a contract with Prime Time. We have a contract with a couple other clubs to train out there. And then we've just started to introduce our adult leagues. So we have some co-ed, and then we also have some open adult leagues. There's even some teams in Ben's league that actually play in the U.S. Open Cup. So
you got a wide variety of players. I can assume you're getting a lot of physical pressure. I mean, there's got to be a lot of beating up on those fields going on.
Yes, there is. But the beauty of having so many fields is we can rotate them around. So that really helps alleviate the pressure of the play. So we can promote recovery. I can also slide my fields north and south to move the goal mouse and change up the wear pattern a little bit.
And how often do you do that?
It kind of depends on the season and how much play we are getting, and I just kind of look and read the turf, and then but if I were to have to give a number, I'd say probably every 3 to 4 weeks we'll slide fields, or we'll make adjustments that way.
Which is nice when you have 34 acres, you can do that. So you're making that decision based on wear and tear for the most part? Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about Troy Crawford. Where did he come from, and where's home originally? And I know you've done some baseball work, and you've been at this complex now for a whole bunch of years. So give me a little resume on you.
Well, I was born and raised up in Everett, Washington, which is just a little bit north of Seattle. Came down to my brother's wedding and ended up marrying the maid of honor. So
that's the oldest line in the book.
Yeah, so I met my wife and came down here, and now I'm.
The wedding was in Texas. I don't know that I know this story. The wedding was in Texas.
Yes, my brother moved down to Texas, and he followed a woman down here, and so I kind of did the same thing, I guess.
There you go.
And moved on down here. So I went back after the wedding, finished that year of college, and just told my dad I was buying a one-way ticket and moved on down to Texas.
There you go. The family's
So,
in Texas, Dad.
yeah. So I went from there and I kind of got hooked up with the groundskeeper for the Rangers. And that was in 93. We built the ballpark in 94. And I worked there for 6-7 years. Houston started building their new stadium. So I went down there at the time and helped build Enron and stayed there for a while.
Were they different? Were the two stadiums, the two baseball stadiums different? Did they manage different? Was the soil different? Was the grass different? I mean, was there any real differences in environment between Houston, Dallas?
Yeah, big time. I mean, the humidity plus, I mean, in Houston, we were closing the roof, and actually the roof was broken for the first like 14 days as we opened up in 2000, and it was kind of crazy. But we had a lot more technology into the field in Houston than we did at the ballpark in Arlington. So
what technology? Under the soil?
Yeah, we had sub-air system that we could use, and there was I think there was even more enhanced drainage than what we had back then. You know, from 94 to 2000, a lot of things had changed a little bit. So. But we had lots of shade factors and stuff like that too, with a retractable roof and cooling things down. I mean, we come in the morning, roof be closed, we open it up, we take all our sweats off, and then at lunch they would close the roof. We'd have to put all our sweats back on as they cool it down. So it created a whole bunch of different challenges.
I understand that the Rangers are now going plastic. Is that really true?
That is true. I've actually went over there with Dennis and looked at it and saw it and went, wow.
Dennis is a good friend, and I'm sure he's not real thrilled about the idea either. But you know, plastic is reality in some places.
Well, when you turn into an entertainment venue, then you know,
economics overrules agronomics sometimes, right?
That is true.
Let's talk agronomics, and I'm going to let you tell the story of how you and I met, which was maybe not my finest moment, but I'll let you tell the story, and then I'll share some of the reasons why we went that way. But share the story of how you and I kind of were first introduced to each other.
Well, when I first got to Elm Fork, you know, I had been out there by myself for a while. I didn't have a crew or anything. And, you know, Colby came out and we decided we'll start with
Colby Killing from BWI. Yeah.
We decided that we would start with a soil test. And
and this is in 2014.
It was actually in 13, but yeah.
Okay. What was there anything there at the time? Did you build this whole complex?
I did not. I came in at the very end of the building. It took them, I think, 4 or 5 years to actually build it, since it was a landfill and there was.
Okay, yeah. Talk about that part, because that'll help defend my my statement here. But I won't interrupt you again. Finish your story.
So the Elm Fork property was originally a landfill. They had a bond election, and I think they put about $36 million in to build it. So there was a lot of concrete and a lot of rebar and trash and everything else there. So they used a lot of dirt from 635 from the excavation there to build up the site. And then we were brought in, and then they decided to sand cap the fields. So all the fields were sand capped, and then they put clay sod on top of it, which was about 2 inch thick or so, which created some more problems in itself and basically sealed it off and nullified the sand capping of the field. But so when we were looking at it, Colby Keeling, said, let's do a soil test, and so we can look at it and see what we were dealing with. And then he told me that he goes, the guy that's looked at your soil test said it's the worst one he's seen ever. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he goes, if he's growing grass, I want to meet him. I want to go down there and see.
I think actually what I said was, I hope he has a resume, because this is one of the worst. I honestly, when he sent this to me, I honestly thought it was a joke that, that he had pulled it off of, the side of a road or something somewhere. And in my feeble defense here, I looked at this, and we have, at least at the time, I don't think we are doing this anymore, but we had what we used to call the Wall of Fame. So some of the worst soil tests that we'd ever seen was on our Wall of Fame, and you were right dead center on this. So I'm going to share some of this because you sent it back to me again. I wasn't even sure which one it was, but like you said, this was a dump. So you had brought in a bunch of stuff, and I remember a couple of times riding around with you when you guys were doing some renovation and hitting rebarb when you're doing some reno work. So, I mean, you definitely aren't dealing with the greatest soil. And that, quite honestly, if anybody's ever got a chance to see your property, if they see the quality of your fields and then compare it to what I'm about to walk you through on the soil test, accolades off to you, my friend, because that's masterful based on this. And that was really what my point was. But Colby sends me this and I look at it. So I'm holding this up now, and I probably should share this on screen, but I won't because it's that bad. I looked at this, and the CEC is 141, which means it's, you know, it's just loaded with stuff. When we pulled the calcium, we found 53,000 pounds per acre of calcium. It's a calcareous mix, and 94% of your base saturation was calcium. But we ran into a deficiency. So 53,000 pounds of calcium, 3,500 pound deficiency of magnesium, and a 4,200 pound deficiency of potassium. You've got virtually no phosphorus. It came in at 25 pounds per acre. I'd like to see 250 pounds if I could. Organic matter was 1, and the sodium value was 121. And I honestly looked at this, and I believe, and I might be wrong here, I believe that I called Susan Shaner at Logan Labs and asked her to run a retest because I'd never seen anything like this. And she sent it back, and it came back virtually the same. I shared it with some of our agronomists here at Earthworks. We all looked at it and chuckled a little bit at your expense. And that's when I called Colby and I said, what is this? This isn't grass. He can't be growing grass on this stuff. There's no way. He goes, oh my gosh. He said, it's a wonderful place. I mean, the place looks fantastic. I'm like, well, then accolades, because and that's when I said, I got to meet this guy, because if he can grow grass on this soil, there's, the pH on this thing is 7.2. There's virtually no trace. I mean, just, you could go perfect classroom study of what not to work from on a soil test. And like I said, you've been masterfully growing. And interesting enough, I mean, when we talk about soils, we changed a lot of this. I mean, we amended a lot of it, and obviously you're growing a beautiful stand of grass. But when you look at today's soil tests, they're still calcareous. There's still big deficiencies in magnesium and potassium. And I think what we talked about, and what I think you've done extremely well is, you've brought into the equation in your program potassium sources, magnesium sources. You've definitely done a great job of bringing the sodium down. I mean, it's, here it's well over 100, and now I think we're in 20s and 30s range consistently by the work you're doing. But yeah, I look at this and I'm thinking, there's no way this guy is growing grass on this thing. And then I came and visited you. I'm like, wow, this is pretty impressive. And you kind of looked at me funny, and I wasn't sure I was welcome after those silly comments, but I was trying to be honest, or just typically silly. But yeah, you've done a masterful job, proving that, if you understand the good and the bad of a soil, you're going to work around it. And obviously you've done that through a strong foliar program. You've been doing a lot of renovations and amendments, and, making things happen. So, again, kudos to what you've done. I mean, it's magical. I mean, we talk about you in our soil classes that I teach. We talk about you in our on our team agronomy calls here at Earthworks, and it's just like, it can be done. It can be. There is hope, and I can point to the man that can tell you it can be done. And on top of this horrible soil, you've got a tremendous amount of play. I mean, I would contend to anybody, the hardest place to grow grass in any turf management is in the goal mouth of a soccer field. And I can honestly say I've walked those fields, and I have to really kind of hunt to find out where the goal mouth is when your fields are being managed and the goals are off the field. It's really an amazing stand. So anyway, I've said enough. But so what's the agronomic philosophy? I mean, you got here, you must have known that this was really horrible. I would assume that you were probably a little taken by how bad these soils were. What did you do when you got there?
Well, to kind of go back and finish up my story, I never I don't have a college degree or anything. I just kind of came up through the ranks with hard knocks, and learning on the job. And so one of the things that I've really focused on is just surrounding myself with smart people, and drawing from their knowledge, if you will.
That's why you called Colby.
Yep. And so, but the one thing I will do is I know that if I aerify and I do all the cultural things and then I put the input into it, I should get the results back from it. So it took us a couple of years of experimenting. I mean, we threw out some fertilizers, and in that soil, it didn't do anything. It just, it wouldn't help us. So that's why we know that we had to go to a foliar program. We have to feed the plant through the leaf, and that the granular side doesn't work. But as we start to do the renovations, that kind of changes. So, the first few years, it was just, we were fighting to stay alive and aerifying every week, and just doing whatever we could culturally to keep it opened up, to keep oxygen in there, keep it respirating, keep it going.
What was it like physically? What was the physical structure like when you got there? Was it really tight and compacted?
Oh yeah. They took a 6-ton roller out there and rolled the whole thing.
Great.
And broke every swing joint on on every sprinkler head. But it was hard as a road. The first time I went to aerify, I went 10 feet, broke 6 times. I went 20 more feet and broke 12 more. So it took me almost 6 months with just slicing to open it up. We did an istric test, which had 0 infiltration rate.
No, I remember that. Yeah. See, I told you this was the worst soil I'd ever seen. You had a 0 on an istric soil test, a physical soil test, and had no infiltration rate. Yep. That's unheard of, really. So water would hit that soil and would just roll off the surface?
Yeah. Yeah. We could get 2 inches of rain and it would still be cracking in the next 20 minutes.
How did you irrigate? I mean, you must have had to pour a lot of water on it to get anything down, right?
Right, but that's why we were aerifying constantly. So gotcha. the more we sliced, the more we could get it through there. And when we started our renovations, you would have seen it. We had 6, 7, 8 inch roots. We actually grew down through that clay. Yeah,
got past it all, and got into this profile that has been changed, but it's still not the most wonderful soil profile. But through all the time. So, what was the grass when you got there? I know you've changed, but what was it when you got there?
It was supposed to be celebration, but I think there's several different grasses out there. Yeah. The areas that I've seen the celebration, it looks really nice in between our fields. As we renovate, I'm not really doing in between the fields, and so you can see the celebration is quite a bit darker green than our Tiff-Tuff.
Yeah, and you've changed to Tiff-Tuff, which not many people know about, and you were the first one that I'd seen that grass on a field, and I was overly impressed. And I remember, I think after the first field you did, you were pretty excited about it. I remember coming over one day and you running over and you could see the visible difference from field to field on that particular grass, even though we can't pronounce Tiff-Tuff very well, and it may not be the world's greatest name. And I think the folks at Georgia would agree with me on that, but it's a wonderful grass, especially in a setting like yours. So what made you choose that particular grass, and tell me what you like about it?
Well, I was kind of, I guess I deal a lot with Tritex grass, and Mike Pender came in and he wanted to introduce me to a new grass. We were actually talking about doing Latitude, and at the time there was no sprigs for Latitude, so I convinced him to buy this machine that will shred the rolls into sprigs. And so, but then he convinced me to try Tiff-Tuff since they were converting their farms to it. And I read a lot of the literature, and I actually went down to Tifton, Georgia, I met Dr. Schwartz and
Yeah.
walked through the trials and stuff. It was really neat to see all that and see how it came into being. So,
Yeah.
um,
What is the history of Tiftuff? Share that with us. What's the genetic makeup? Do you know off the top of your head? It's a whole series of combinations of different TIF varieties, and I don't remember the specifics, but it's something that we could find out. Anybody could find out by looking up. But it's an interesting parental history of what that grass is. But it's a beautiful grass, and it has really it's really stands out on your property, and I've seen it now in a couple other soccer fields.
It grows. I mean, the recovery is
Yeah.
is amazing, and when you start using your PGRs on it, the density and the tensile strength of it is amazing. So that kind of helps us. That's why you can't see where the gold mouse are, because it is so thick and hardy and recovers so quickly.
Whereas the other grasses, the gold mouse, were a little bit more obvious.
Yeah. Our lacrosse fields are 419, and I gave you a good example. So when we built our lacrosse fields, we put a square where the crease is for lacrosse, and we did those in Tiftuff. So we had these, I think it was 20 feet by 20 feet squares. Well, in the first year they wore out, obviously, the crease and then around that. And so when they were done, we aerified it, we put out some fertilizer and, spruced it up, and we sat back and watched. And it took 14 days for that square of Tiftuff to recover, and it took 6 weeks for the 419 to catch back up.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Was that the first place you used it on the lacrosse?
No, that was, so we had done our first renovation on our field 8, and then that was the second place that we had used it. Yes.
When you got there, how many fields were there? When you first came to the property, were there 18?
There were 20 fields.
They were all there.
There was only, we converted 2 fields into parking lot because they weren't graded very well.
Oh, not because of this wonderful soil test that I'm looking at here in my desk?
It could be part of that, but
some of that.
they were a little rough. They were some of the last fields there, and so they weren't graded real well.
So when did you start working with Tiftuff?
Wow. Let's see. We've done probably 5 years ago. So
how many fields now? 6?
We
7?
have done 5 fields.
5 fields of the 18 are Tiftuff.
6 fields now. Yeah, we're growing in our 6th field as we speak right now. We are 28 days into, and we have about 80% coverage on that field right now from sprigs.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
I've mowed it twice and fertilized it yesterday, and it's this year has been the best one so far, and I think it's because the sprigs we put down were done in a more uniform pattern.
Oh, so you've gotten some better experience on managing all this too, which is good. One of the reasons why I really wanted to chat with you today is because I'm a big fan of helping people understand the return on investments. And, you and I have been working together now for the better part of 6 some years. And, we've learned an awful lot from you. And I love having guests on this podcast that taught us a lot, and you've taught us an awful lot. So, and I think this, that we've leaned on you a lot when we talk to other soccer field managers or athletic field managers. But one of the things that you taught us more than anything was this return on investment, especially in light of your property being such a property of financial return. I mean, you got so many people, coming there, obviously putting a lot of money to play on these fields, and that's why you're getting so much play. And it's a business. I mean, as are most facilities like yours. So you started, and I'm going to let you tell the majority of the story, but I'll just set this up. You started renovating fields and amending fields. And again, you and I have talked a lot about the value of biological soil management and getting minerals and carbon sources into the foundation to build that base. But you started a number of years ago building 1 or 2 fields and doing a little amending, and then you realized that you were opening up a little quicker, and then just continued that process. So let me have you take over on that. Explain to us, your thought process, how this started, and where you are now with your thoughts on amending prior to building and constructing a new field.
Well, the main thing is with the thick clay, we were just struggling. I mean, even though you give me all these accolades about how great it wasn't great, and we were really struggling to grow. So the idea was
That's the accolade.
We need to improve what we have here. So originally we would have Tritex come in, and they would harvest off the sod, get down to our sand cap, so remove all that. And the crazy thing is we did that, and that sand would sit there for 3 weeks, and there was no grass return. Nothing. We didn't have to fumigate. We didn't have to do anything to kill it off, but no grass would come back.
Yeah, that's a dead soil, isn't it?
Yeah. So anyway, then we would come in and sprig the field. Originally, the first time we sprigged, we probably used I think it was like 12 rolls of sod. We went one direction. We used a few soil amendments. And the crazy thing that I learned about TIFTUF is we used to flood it, make it like a rice field where it's just wet. But as the years have gone on and I've done that, that stuff is so drought tolerant that I water it just the same as I water any of my other fields. The first week, though, I will water it every day, just once a day for about 20 minutes.
Just to get it going, get it established. Yep. Yeah.
And then once it's established, I mean, so it does not like the water if you flood it like that. It does not, and it actually hinders the growth. But the more soil amendments we've added, we increased the sprigs to try and reduce the downtime of that field. Having a lot of fields is good. We can have a field down, but that puts increased pressure on the other fields, increasing the wear in that. So the quicker we can get it back into the rotation, the less stress that we put on the rest of the complex. And then last year, when we did 2 fields at one time, which was the first time we did 2, we really had a tremendous amount of pressure on the other fields. So it was even more emphatic that we get those fields back into the rotation so that we can help reduce the stress on the rest of the fields. So that's why we keep toying with and changing. And I think so, like this renovation we've upped our soil amendments, and now we've upped our sprigs. We use 2 truckloads of sprigs instead of just 1. We're going 3 directions when we're sprigging.
You've doubled your sprigs.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And so I think the field that we just did, we're 28 days, like I said, and about 80% coverage. We've been trying to hit the 60-day mark to get back to playing.
Yeah.
We've got to 69 days.
That's good.
But I feel fairly confident this year we might actually make 60 days.
What was the first, when the first field you did, how many days before you got back on?
I think we were about 100, 110, somewhere in there.
So you've almost cut it in half.
Yep.
And every day you're open, those fields are generating what kind of revenue?
Yeah, so each field, when we're going, generates anywhere from $5,000 to $6,000 a month. Right. So every month that one field's down you're losing $6,000.
Yeah, so an extra 60 days is a pretty good return on the investment. Huge. So how much in at least in percentage dollars, how much more is the investment to get you to that 60-day mark? I mean, is it substantially more? Or are you actually able to walk back to management and say, yes, it's costing us X amount of money for this investment of more sprigs, more volume, and I think you're using Renovate and some of our stuff in the amendment package, more of these amendments going in. Are they seeing the management, seeing the return on investment, the value of you being able to open up in 60 days?
Yeah. I think, the main thing why we're sprigging is because so we don't have any kind of layering and so forth effect. But Yes, anything. So we wanted to sprig. We could afford the sod, but we don't want that layering. We don't want to introduce different sands and soils. So the number one reason we're doing sprigging is so that we don't have that. But so they understand that. But when you sprig, you're going to have obviously a longer downtime.
Yeah.
So anything that we can do to increase that, they're all for. And I think we probably save, I don't know what the number is exactly off the top of my head, but I know we're saving money, and which helps us to make money,
Right.
in the long run.
On
So
investment.
yeah, we have great return on our investment because we're able to get that field back in. And when we get with the soil amendments, it's much healthier too,
Right.
stronger, and
Recovers better.
yep.
Yeah.
So
So, I mean, it's not just a grow-in process. It's a long-term investment in what you're doing especially for a property like yours. It gets so much pressure.
I think the biggest thing is, you could sod it, you could sprig it. We sprigged it. Sodding it's almost 3 times as expensive as sprigging it. You add in the soil amendments, it's probably, twice as expensive, but sodding might save you what, 30 days more, but at what price? So
Yeah.
I think if you look at that and add it all up, the even with our soil amendments and everything that we're doing, we are actually saving money and coming out ahead on the long run. I think the product that we end up having is a lot better too.
Yeah, that goes without saying. Did you have? I assume the sprigging concept was yours. Is that fair?
Well, I just kind of Googled and YouTubed,
There you go.
can we convert rolls into, and so I got this machine and talked, I sent it to Mike Pender and Randy at Tritex, and so one of the funniest stories was they found one of those machines. They came out, and Pender was out there with his guys, and they're watching the YouTube video on how the machine runs.
How
I was like,
how to use the thing that you
that
found for
doesn't
them.
give me a whole lot of warm fuzzies. You got to watch that.
Couldn't you have
But
done
they
that
got
with
it done.
before you got here, just to make me feel better? I'll make a note of that next time I do something like that as well. Did you have a hard time convincing management to let you go to sprig and take? I mean, obviously that first couple of times. Well, 120 days that was still sprigging, right? The longest one. So I can imagine that they were not too thrilled about having 120 days down from that process.
Well, the great thing is my boss, I've worked with for a lot of years. He's a former groundskeeper, so he really understands why we're doing it, and he does a great job. We have tremendous support from all of our guys up top of us. So, and he does a good job selling them and helping them understand what we're doing, why we're doing it. And so it wasn't difficult to convince them because they believe and trust in all of us as groundskeepers and what we're doing. So, and like I said, the support is what's key there. They trust us to do what we know what to do.
But with all due respect, they're also businessmen, and they, I mean, it's a business. And so anybody that has, any business experience is going to really weigh that return on investment. But, and when you started this, you didn't really know that you were going to be able to go from 120 to 60 days opening by improving, your process, getting more amendments into the program, doubling the amount of sprigs, working it into the soil a little bit better. All the things that you've been doing have allowed you to, literally cut that time in half and be open in full play. That must have been a bit of a nerve-wracking experience for you, because you're still having to go back and justify your time, your expense, and what you're doing. And a lot of times we do these things and we're kind of shooting in the dark, but you had enough confidence and understand enough about how the soil works that you were able to get it down to 60. And honestly, 60 days is unheard of. I mean, I don't know anybody that, can go from sprig to the kind of play you're getting in 60 days. But like I said, it's a testament to to the work you guys have done. But that must have been a little nerve-wracking for the bean counters upstairs.
Well, I don't know if it was nerve-wracking for them, but I was sure nervous. I mean, the first time I went to sprig a field, I had no clue what I was doing.
Right.
I
Let's
mean, we're
just do it.
watching YouTube videos for heaven's
Right.
sake. So,
Exactly.
you know, it's definitely been a lot of trial and error, and you know, tweaking it here and there. You
Yeah.
know, the first time we did it, we had nutsedge everywhere, and
Oh
so
boy. Yeah.
now I learned that I got to get the nutsedge under control before we strip it off and
Right.
use the Coro to get down to our sand. And you know, the other factor was this: once we get all of the old grass off, and then we have extreme sports fields come in and grade it, laser grade it out for us. You know, and then when you bring the machine in to sprig it, you kind of ruin what your grade.
Right.
So what we've done is we took 4 or 5 days, we water the heck out of it, roll it 2 or 3 times, and this field turned out really well. When they came in with their tractor this time, it was compacted a bit more. It was more solid. They, you know, and so the sprigs went out in a much more uniform pattern. And I think we're finally getting there. We keep tweaking everything
Every time, right?
but I think we're continuing to get better and better.
So you should be writing a manual or a book on all this. You know that there's a lot of people that can learn and experience this return on investment. I remember, I think the last time I was out on your property, you were actually removing all the old grass and getting that, and that was fascinating. I mean, all the stuff that they were pulling out. I mean, you know, every 20 feet they were filling up a you know, a dump truck full of stuff. You know, and that was pretty impressive the way they worked that. But that's all part of the learning experience, all that work you've done.
Well, yeah, I mean, you not only grass were we pulling out, we pulled out rebar, we pulled out
Yes,
T-posts.
I saw some of that.
You know, luckily the Coro machine's pretty stout, and you know, it hit that T-post. It actually split it in half, and luckily it didn't shoot it out the chute. But
killed somebody.
Yeah. We always run into interesting things. I mean,
Yeah, I bet.
sheets of plywood underneath the fields.
I remember the one time walking that field and you were saying, "Hey, come here, look at this," and there was just a piece of rebarb sticking up through the field. I'm like, really? How far does that go down? I don't know. So yeah, it's what happens when you know, put a complex on a dump, you know, and have these kind of soils to work on top of that. But hey, tell me a little bit about how the whole COVID thing has affected your business. I mean, I can see how it affected your personal life. Your, you know, your wife Nicole has got a beautiful setup there that you're working out of the classroom, and obviously her life has radically changed. Has it affected a lot of how you go to business? And obviously you had to have lost a lot of play, I would assume, for at least a period of time. How has this affected you?
We were shut down, I think probably somewhere in March, second week in March, we shut down, and we just were able to open back up the beginning of June. So we were down for quite a while, you know, and it was good and bad. We didn't get to host Dallas Cup this year, which is kind of our Super Bowl, if you will, and so that was kind of disappointing. But the good part is we didn't have the play. We had a tremendous year last year where we brought in a very good amount of money, had a good profit, but we had a tremendous amount of play, a record amount of play as well. So we were beat up pretty good. So the time was good for the fields to recover. I feel really great about where we're at right now. We have minimal play right now. We're actually finishing out a few seasons, which normally right now all we have is a tournament here or there. But we're finishing out the leagues that had to press pause on their leagues, and then we'll go right into, in August we'll flow right into our next season. So it was good that I got the time to recover. It was bad that we didn't get the economic impact that we normally do and create for the city.
You're running on a pretty small crew as it is. Did you lose anybody other than when Ben decided to leave? But did you lose people because of COVID?
We did not.
Good.
The small amount of guys that we have, there's just me and of course Ben left in February, and his position's still open. We haven't done anything with that.
Maybe he'll come back. We'll talk to him.
Yeah.
A good man.
Well, I get to see Ben quite a bit since he's out there, but
yeah, he's a good.
you know, with my other 2 full-time guys and 2 part-time guys, we kept after it, and those guys are all dedicated and love and enjoy what we're doing out there. We're kind of a tight-knit group, so and everybody knows what we need to do to get things done.
You're managing 34 acres of fine textured sports turf with 5-6 guys on a daily basis.
Yeah, right now 3 full-time, 2 part-time.
Yeah, that's impressive. I mean, again, to see this complex and to know the quality of the turf that you have consistently. Is there anything turf-wise that keeps you up at night? I mean, or is there any ongoing continuous problems that you ever face on those fields other than wear and tear?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that normally I don't worry about if we rain out a weekend game or this or that, but there are, when it's Dallas Cup time and you know, we have TV out there, we have to show nationally televised games and it's raining. That was one amazing thing. The last 2 years it has rained. We had TV games and they played in the rain, and there's no drainage under those fields. I mean, there's splashing water everywhere, and the field stood up to it and did a really good job. But those are the nights that I don't sleep very well, and I worry a lot about getting those games in, making sure we're looking good, and representing the guys and all their hard work. And
you probably couldn't have done that when you started this back in 2012, 14. Those fields would have just been a soggy mess.
Well, yeah, all the other fields that we haven't renovated, you couldn't play on. I mean, there was standing water. I mean, the infiltration rate is better, but it's not like the sand cap fields that we have renovated. So
how many more fields left to renovate?
We got 4 more to go. 4 more to go.
You're gonna finish out all 18 soccer fields.
Well, that's the goal, to try and get them done in the next 2 years as they come through to tour sites for World Cup. We need to be looking good and have all those renovated and sprucing up the rest of the property. So as we bring the delegates around, we present a very nice site.
And you do on a regular basis. I want to thank you, my friend, for all your support over all these years. Like I said, you have taught us as much as we could possibly offer you. But it's been wonderful to be able to support you and to watch this thing grow and to see these fields perform the way they perform. Again, it's, I mean, I'm not trying to blow smoke, but it's quite impressive knowing what you're working from soil-wise and where you've been to seeing what this is now. So again, my hat is always off to you, and it's always a pleasure to be able to call you a friend. So, and thank you for doing the podcast.
I appreciate you having me on here, Joel. I will say this, anybody who's out there struggling with your soils, the Earthworks products, it's not a quick fix. It's something that will help you over time. And if you stick with it, you will get the results that you're wanting. And listen to Joel, listen to all those smart guys out there. And soils don't change overnight. It takes time, and you have to be dedicated to what your end goal is. But I appreciate you having me on here. It's been interesting. I know I'm not too good at all this talking
you've
stuff.
been wonderful.
But I appreciate you having me on here, and I appreciate all the kind things that you guys say and all the knowledge that you guys have given me.
Thank you, Troy. It's been, like I said, it's been a great experience. And if anybody gets a chance to come out and see your facility, and you know, they can learn a lot from what you guys have done. So I'm grateful. Thank you so much. And I'm not paying you for that little compliment by you. So, but thank you just the same. Thank you, Troy. And we're gonna be continuing with our podcast. So please stay with us over the next number of weeks, and hopefully you gain something from listening to Troy. Thank you everybody for joining us. And again, thank you, Troy. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joel.